Hey everyone, Julian here, and welcome back to another episode of the Learning Flask series. This is episode 9, and we're going to be working with JSON. Now, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation and is a commonly used format for sending and receiving data over the web, and you'll find it everywhere from websites to APIs to webhooks, and Flask gives us some really nice ways for working with JSON. So let's jump straight in. As always, text-based version of this guide, link in the description. We've got our editor open and we've got a terminal. Let's go ahead and run our app. We're in development mode here. And another tool that we're going to be using in this episode is called Postman, and you can get that at getpostman.com/downloads. And it's a cross-platform application that allows us to send and receive requests. So it's really simple to use and really useful, so we're going to be working with that. So JSON, how do we work with it in Flask? Well, in this episode we're going to be sending and receiving JSON, and we'll do it all from the same root. So let's go ahead and create a new root. I'm going to call it JSON. And we're going to be posting data to this root, so we need to give it the methods argument and the type of method we want to use. In our case, we just want to use post. So let's go ahead and create our function underneath. I'm just going to call it JSON, and I'm going to return just a simple string along with an HTTP status code. So if we go ahead and jump into the Postman app, select the type of request that we want to make on the left here. We want to make a post request, and then we just give it a URL. So HTTP, and we give it the development server URL, which is 127.0.0.1:5000, and then we give it the path. So ours was just JSON. Now, if we go ahead and send this, you can see we get a response here. We get a string saying thanks, and we get a 200 status code, which is exactly what we told our root to do. But what we want to do is actually send some JSON data to our root. We want to post it up to our root. So what we can do in the body here, so go ahead and click on body and then click on raw, and then change this from text to JSON. So go ahead and do so. Now, if you've never worked with JSON before or never seen it, it looks a lot like a Python dictionary. So 2 curly braces, and then key value pair separated with a colon. So I'm just going to put name, colon. I'm going to stick my name in, but feel free to change that to your own. And then message, I'm going to say posting JSON to Flask. Just like that. And there we go, we've got a typo in there. So now, if we go ahead and send, you can see we get the same response. We get thanks and a 200 status code. So we've posted some JSON to our root, but we haven't handled it. We haven't done anything with it. We haven't collected it. So how do we do that? Well, first thing, I want you to make sure you've got request imported. So working with any kind of request, we need to make sure we've got that imported from Flask. So go ahead and import that if you haven't. And just like we did with request.form, we're going to pass and save our incoming request data into a variable. I'm going to call that rec. Now, to actually get that JSON data, we use request.getJSON and a set of parentheses. So we're calling this method on the request object. And what this is going to do is, if there is any JSON in the request body, it's going to go ahead and convert that into a Python dictionary, which is very useful. So if we print the type of rec, and then below that I'll just print the actual dictionary itself. So keep an eye on the terminal here, and when I go ahead and send this, you can see it's the class of dictionary, and then it goes and prints the dictionary just below it. So we got name, Julian, and message, posting JSON to Flask. So that is, in its most simple form, how you receive some JSON and pass it into a Python object. You use the .getJSON method. So what else can we do? Well, we can actually validate if the incoming request contains some JSON. So we'll do the following: if request.getJSON is JSON colon. Then we want to go ahead and then we want to go ahead and convert our JSON into a Python dictionary, and then we'll indent this return as well. And I'm just going to say JSON received. Now what happens if the JSON isn't in the request body? Well, let's put an else in here, and then let's just return no JSON received, and we'll give that an HTTP status code of 400, which is a client error. And I will throw another link in the description to this useful Wikipedia page, and it's got a list here of all the different HTTP status codes, so that is very useful. So let's come back to our Postman app, if I can find it. There we go. Now if we go ahead and click on send, you can see here we get a response with JSON received, a status of 200. And if we go ahead and change this to text, so we're not sending any JSON to our server anymore, we've changed this to text. So we go ahead and click send, we get a response with no JSON received, and we get a status of 400, bad request. So that's exactly what we told our application to do, so that's working nicely. So what else can we do? Well, we can send some JSON from our route back to the client. So to do so, we're going to import JSonify, and we're also going to import make response. And these are two extremely useful functions provided by Flask, which let us do all sorts of stuff with JSON and creating responses for our client. So let's go ahead and use them. So how do we use JSonify? Well, first of all, let's create a Python dictionary. So I'm just going to call this response, just a normal Python dictionary, and I'm going to create a key called message with a value of JSON received, and then we'll also go ahead and add another field in our dictionary, and I'm just going to call it name. And let's go ahead and grab the one of the values from our Python dictionary here in the request object. So rec.get, and we'll give it a key of name. So what this is going to do is just go ahead and grab the name key from the past JSON, which we've now converted into a dictionary. Now, how do we use JSonify? Well, first of all, I want to create another variable. I'm going to call it res, and then we'll use the make response function, which we've just imported. Now, make response takes a couple of arguments. We're going to give it the JSonify function as one argument, and inside JSonify, I'm going to pass in our response. Now, what JSonify does is just takes any Python strings, lists or dictionaries and converts them into JSON. So essentially we're just creating a response here ahead of actually returning it and passing it a couple of different arguments. I'm also going to pass it a status code. So I'm going to give that the 200 status code for a sort of successful transaction. And then we'll go ahead and return our response object here. So just to recap what we've done, we've created a dictionary, we've created a new variable here called res, which is actually a response, and we're creating our response ahead of time before actually returning it. And you can do all sorts of cool stuff with make response, which we'll explore in the future. So to make response, we've passed JSonify, which again takes any kind of Python object, whether it's a string, dictionary or list, and converts that into JSON. And then we've also passed in an HTTP status code here. So let's do the same with our in our else block here. I'm just going to do res, make response, and to that I'm going to pass JSonify. But rather than create a separate dictionary, I'm just going to do it all in here. Message, and I'm going to say no JSON received, and I'm going to give that a status code of not 200, we're going to do 400 because that's a client error. and we'll go ahead and return our response. So now if we jump back into the Postman app and click send, we've still got it in text mode, and we get we do get some JSON returned, but we get a bad request in the status here because we didn't actually send any JSON, we sent text. Now if we change this back to application JSON and go ahead and send, you can see here we get a message, a JSON object back with message and JSON received and the name of Julian, because that was the name that we actually posted up to our server. And you can see here we get a status code of 200. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show you for this episode. So just to recap, we import the request object, and then we use that to verify if we actually have any JSON coming into our route. If we do, then we use the .getJSON method on the request object, which is going to pass that JSON object and convert it into a Python dictionary. We've then created another dictionary ourselves, given it a couple of values, and then we've created our response here ahead of time, ahead of sending it in the return, using make response, which we've passed JSonify, and to that we've given a Python dictionary here. And JSonify is going to go ahead and it actually wraps the Python JSON.dumps function and converts that into a JSON string. And we've also given it a status code of 200 in our response. And then we've returned that. And as you know, we've caught this here. If the request doesn't include any JSON, we're going to run this block here, which is again just going to do the same. It's going to create a response. It's going to JSonify a Python dictionary here and provide a status code of 400, and then go ahead and return that. So that pretty much wraps it up for this one. If you've enjoyed it, let me know. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. As always, text-based version of this guide is available over at the website. I'll throw a link in the description. If you enjoyed, feel free to subscribe and drop a like on the video. It really helps me out. And as always, I will see you in the next one.